Let's see. Are we live yet? Are we live yet? Ah! I see a picture of my face. I think that means we're live. Hooray! Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Alright, okay. This is happening. Wonderful. I'm gonna pop out this chat in case anyone comes and chats. Pop out chat. Wonderful. Okay. Hi everyone. I know there's probably nobody in here yet because this is my very first stream. My very first stream as Encountersmith that actually has to do with like ttrpgs and stuff. Because today I wanted to start a small mini series where we make combat encounters, but ones that are actually good. What do I mean by that? What do I mean about good combat encounters versus maybe not so great combat encounters? As someone who started with Dungeons and Dragons and obsessed over combat balancing, I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of math of how to perfectly balance combat. And I figured it out. I had charts and modifiers and everything, and it was awful. It worked where like every combat was challenging enough, but not too deadly, depending on their level and magic items and how good I thought they were at the game. I had a chart for everything and a modifier for everything. But that made combat pretty boring and kind of scary. And you're supposed to be like super powered fantasy characters. And when every combat is you're kind of escaping by the skin of your teeth, well, then it gets really scary. And then these super powered fantasy characters don't want to enter combat anymore. So what did I turn to? Combat goals. It's the simplest thing in the whole world, but you would be surprised to believe how many people don't add combat goals into a lot of their combats. Now, having a combat where you kind of just stomp a bunch of goblins or skeletons early on and stuff like that, that's still awesome and feels great because, again, a lot of these combat ttrpgs, you're supposed to feel super powerful, and that's awesome. But, one second. My bitrate is too low. I'm learning things about streaming as I'm streaming. So again, I don't think a lot of people are going to see this, and that's fine. But the idea is that we're going to make combat encounters together, hopefully one day in the future, once people realize this is happening. And then I will eventually edit this into a video and a more digestible video where people can actually take these combat encounters. We'll go over how you can manipulate them yourself to tailor them more towards your party and your group. But we're going to come up with these ideas together based on combat goals. Like I was saying before I got distracted by my UI telling me my bitrate's too low. So the reason I wanted to start this now, because if you're familiar with the channel, I've probably talked about how to make combat better based solely on adding secondary or tertiary goals into your combat and how that makes it more fun. If you don't believe me, if you don't believe that that makes combat more fun, I'm assuming a lot of my viewers have at least done one good playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. Great game, love it. Some of the fan favorite fights, boss fights in that game have a secondary goal. Maybe that secondary goal is tied into the primary goal of combat, which is defeating the enemy before they defeat you, but sometimes not. For example, the spoilers. When you have to do a prison break, you have a certain amount of rounds to complete that and get survivors and prisoners out before something really bad happens. That is probably one of my favorite fights in Baldur's Gate 3. I know a lot of other people agree with me, and that's because that's not about the enemies. There are lots of enemies in there. You can fight them all if you want to. You probably don't have the time to. They're almost more of a distraction than they are the main goal, and that's in honest, why we like combats. A lot of people think combat gets boring because of maybe your players are too overpowered, or the monsters just aren't interesting enough, which may be the case. But I think it's because there aren't a lot of different combat goals. We get too comfortable with just throwing monsters that we think our players can handle, maybe they can't handle, and then they eventually just get bored of it because they're kind of doing the same thing with the same class. That's when you have your players start wanting to try different classes and things like that. So, the reason I brought this up today and why I wanted to start this series mostly is because of Daggerheart. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Daggerheart, but their combat system is very different. But in their rulebook, they have a page. It's page 179 if you happen to have the Daggerheart core rulebook, where they have a whole section on the layered goals into combat. And there's a chart. And this chart is going to be kind of the foundational core of this whole series, where this chart gives you prompts, objective generation prompts to have a layered goal or a secondary goal in your combat encounters. This actually makes both of those goals really important. If you have a different layered goal into your combat encounter, the combat becomes more stressful because a lot of your players might be more distracted doing the other goal. And then it makes the other goal more stressful because people are trying to maybe kill you while you're doing it. So I want to look at this chart together. I think I pulled it up here. There. Oh, there. This is 12 combat prompts that you can find in the Daggerheart core rulebook. I'm just going to lean over this way so you guys can see this chart. So what I want to do over the next 12 streams, I'm going to try to do one every week. And the idea is that we are going to make a combat goal and a combat encounter together using each of these, right? Now, because this is my first one and I don't expect anyone else to really be here, I am just going to start at the top at number 1. And then just for ease, I'm going to balance these encounters to the number. So this first one, we're going to go acquire or obtain or steal an important item or items. That is going to be the secondary goal of our combat encounter today. And I'm going to balance it for level 1s for D&D. And then I'll probably, if we have time later, also balance it for level 1s of Daggerheart. Because the idea is the idea of the secondary goal is supposed to be so strong that it is a little bit system agnostic. Because we're going to theme it, we're going to tie it into the story, and we'll kind of do a backwards planning. So we'll start with the encounter, we'll start with the secondary goal, and then we'll talk about the things your players need to know, things the players may have needed to experience before coming to this encounter. So again, today we are going number 1. The secondary goal we're going to add to our combat encounter is how to acquire, obtain, or steal an important item or items during our combat encounter. Now we're going to build this in Roll20 in real time. Again, because I didn't think anyone's going to come to this one, I've actually already kind of have a pretty good idea of something I want to do for this, inspired by some other media and things I've been doing. Drinking on stream is very strange for me still. I'm still used to just like recording everything, pausing, drinking, and then like editing it out later. So forgive me if I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous. This is my first real live stream for this channel anyways. So acquire, steal, or obtain item or items. I have recently rewatched the movie Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp. It doesn't age that well, but it's still a really good time and a really good watch. And the Headless Horseman idea is very intriguing to me because it's horror themed, and doing horror themed stuff in a game, especially like Dungeons and Dragons, is really hard because the idea is to make your players scared. It's really hard to make your players scared in Dungeons and Dragons when they're basically freaking superheroes. So the idea I had in this encounter was going to be essentially a monster fight where, let me move. to a screen. I need this. A monster fight, essentially, where the monster is unkillable or undamageable. This is something a lot of video games use in terms of combat balancing or combat encounters. Just to make something different. If you've beaten Baldur's Gate 3 on honor mode, they do a similar mechanic for the end encounter where the monster, I'm trying to be spoiler free as possible. The monster at the end is immune to certain damage types that you had used in the previous round. So getting around a way where a good way to make a boss encounter, I guess we're making a boss encounter, is to have something that prevents that boss from being damaged, because the natural instincts of every players in D&D is to hit the thing really hard so you could beat it before it beats you. But if there is some sort of mechanic that prevents you from harming it, well, then that is our secondary goal. So the theme I'm going with is a single entity, a single monster, which is usually taboo in boss fights, right? You never want your party ganging up on one monster, but this monster will be pretty tough and invulnerable to damage until they do secondary combat goal. And it's only a combat goal because it's a goal happening in combat. So that is kind of the theme we're going with. And if we're going with this list, acquire, obtain, or steal an important item or items. So if this monster, right, we're gonna say Headless Horseman as a placeholder for now. If this monster is invulnerable to anything your players do, obviously earlier in the adventure or campaign, you would want your players to experience this monster, try to damage it, realize they cannot, and then somehow get away from that encounter. We can go over more of like the prerequisites of things your players should or shouldn't know before this encounter towards the end of it. But that's the idea, right? If you watch the movie Sleepy Hollow, they encounter the horseman. They even try to fight it at one point and realize there's nothing they can do with any of their weapons that can actually damage this creature to the point where they can actually even stop it. So the idea is I want my players kind of to do a small dungeon crawl in the middle of combat. So in terms of like battle maps, because we're going to be building this in Roll20, I wanted to use a map that has a lot of rooms. Some of them might be bigger, some of them might be smaller, mostly on the smaller side, to and I'll have all of them kind of attached to each other. So a manor or a house or something, or maybe even a series of caves with really small rooms that are all really close to each other with multiple entrances and exits leading to each other. Ideally, that's what I want, because this is like the one combat encounter where I think it would be beneficial for the players to split up. And as we go into some of the other mechanics that we'll be laying in this encounter, I think that will be really cool and really beneficial, especially if the rooms are smaller. So you having the average of a 30 movement speed in D&D, you'll be able to get through one room or another room pretty fast, pretty easily, and searching for this item. Because again, remember, our combat goal for this one is to acquire, obtain, or steal an important item or items. So let's go over to Roll20. Let me show you the Roll20 page. Now, this is a manor house. So when I started thinking about the Headless Horseman idea, I really remembered this book, the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Now, this is actually one of my favorites, 5th edition 2014 source books for DMs. There's a couple subclasses in here, stuff about domains of dread. And then there's even a one-shot in here that I had once ran, very altered, but I ran with a group of mine. So what we're going to do is use the map for that one-shot. Now, this map particularly, I think it's the same map that's in the adventure in the back of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, but it was created by another pro user in Dungeon Fog. I remember when I had a Dungeon Fog subscription, this was a player-made house that emulated that map. So if you want this map for yourself, That is the only way I think I know to get it is to have a Dungeon Fog subscription. But if you want to use this house, I'm sure a lot of other people have recreated the map for Ravenloft's for the adventure in Ravenloft. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find a map very similar. Or if you want to make a map, I even had the idea of even making a simple map in like Dungeon Scroll and making each of the rooms like perfect squares, and then having a mechanic where in the middle of combat, the rooms kind of switch places magically and hauntingly. So then while your players are searching for the item, the acquire, obtain, steal important item, the rooms will move on them. So again, talking about this goal, wow, this is so weird as a live stream. I'm just being really honest. I don't know if anyone's watching, but the fact that I'm trying to talk a lot, and I'm trying not to think about, man, how am I going to edit this mess later? But I guess that's what you get on this live stream, is the endless ramblings of a dungeon master with ADHD and a daily dose of Adderall. So that's where I'm at. But okay, the thing is, the most important goal is to obtain or steal an important item or items. Now, here's the encounter in a basis. And this is like kind of the number one idea whenever you're making a combat goal more interesting. Thinking of the idea or theme. We've talked about the Headless Horseman and how, or some monster, I'm just using the Headless Horseman as an example, some other monster that cannot be killed by regular means. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach that to our combat prompt, which is acquire, obtain, steal important item. I have the idea that maybe a witch or some sort of hag had created, have taken this monster's heart, right? And they've cursed it and hidden it in this place, in this manor or cave or wherever your encounter is. They've hidden it here. And once your players find that out through some other adventure, through some social encounter earlier in the adventure, they will then have to go into this house to find the heart, get rid of it, so then this monster can be properly fought. Now, if it was literally just like go in, find the thing, destroy it, that one really wouldn't fall in line with our prompt here, and also wouldn't really be a combat encounter, because if you can't fight it at all, then that it kind of defeats the point. So the idea I have is that the heart, we're going to call it the horseman's heart, that is going to be hidden in one of these rooms. Now, you can have a token that simulates that. You don't even have to have a token that simulates that. Every turn, again, when this combat encounter starts, ideally this haunted house would react to the players entering it. Maybe your players enter it from different sides. Ideally, they would have to know that this combat encounter is the idea I have in my head. It's going to be very deadly because of some of the stuff that I was inspired by Van Rishen's Guide to Ravenloft. So you're going to hide it somewhere here. Your players will go around to each room on their turn of their initiative, maybe together, maybe not. That's completely up to them, and kind of search these rooms for this item. While that is happening, they will have no idea, well, where the Headless Horseman or monster is in the house. If you're doing this on Roll20, I would just move a token around that represents that monster onto the GM layer. So I'll go to the GM layer and we'll just grab we'll grab someone spooky out of these tokens. Here we go. Yeah, this is a spooky guy. This will be our quote unquote Headless Horseman. And we're just going to put him here for now. He's on the GM layer, which means that no one can see him except for the GM. And ideally, that's how I would move him every day, every round. On his turn, I would move him to a different room. So let's, I should have probably organized some sort of app, right? Some sort of app that'll let me take notes or whatever, but I didn't. So for now, I think we're just setting up with we're going to do a handout. Yeah, I think I have the handout started here. The encounter notes. I'll put it in the GM section. And this is where we're just kind of list our ideas as they come to us for this encounter. So the main idea is monster who cannot be harmed by normal means until thing is obtained. So that's the main idea of this encounter, is like you'll have a monster or monsters. I don't know why I put monsters. You'll have a monster who cannot be harmed by the normal ways your party would harm stuff until a thing is obtained. That thing, we've kind of talked, is going to be some sort of cursed heart of the original monster. And that it's hidden somewhere in this manner. So, PCs must find thing. We're just gonna we're gonna keep calling this thing in quotes. Thing. They must find thing in different. Must find search. Search for thing in different rooms on battle mat map during combat. So essentially the idea is that it's going to be somewhat of a dungeon crawl during combat. That's what I have so far. And now I'm just going to slowly start building this together with some ideas. Now, the idea is that this monster would roam around each of these rooms while the players are looking for this this heart, right? Or our MacGuffin, if you will. Every round, we'll say every round. And I'm just writing this down to kind of record my own thoughts, because the amount of times I've come up with like a really good idea while I'm building or planning an encounter and then immediately forgotten about it is crazy. So even if like we type down something here on our notes that we don't end up using, we decide it's not worth it, like just having it all down is really good. Trust me. I've dropped so many good ideas just because I forgot to write it down. So every round the monster will move to different rooms. So again, with the idea that your players would have the knowledge that this thing is invulnerable without collecting this item is pretty important here. So we'll put that down too. Players should have info that monster cannot be harmed without, we're going to say without removing thing, because we're going to keep calling this thing, should have the info that the monster cannot be harmed without removing thing from the house. Now, I think originally I was like, yeah, they'll find the heart, put a knife through it, then the thing can be fought. But that falls, if we look on the chart here, it says acquire, oh my god, what have I done? It says acquire, obtain, or steal important item or items. It doesn't say destroy item. That's actually on this list. I think somewhere down here. Destroy piece of architecture, statue, shrine, weapon. So I don't want them to just find it and destroy it. I think the thing and the house are connected, right? Maybe this house belonged to the creature before they belonged to the monster before it was turned into a monster. Again, if we're using the headless horseman analogy, maybe it was turned into this monster and was once mortal. Its heart was cursed, and it's bound to this house. And the only way it can be hurt is if its heart that has been removed from its chest and cursed is removed from this house. So we'll put that down as the solid piece of information. Monster cannot be slain until its cursed heart is removed from its, call it, layer. Bam. And those last two notes are basically saying the same thing, but that is the idea. Whatever your players do up until this point should give them the information, hey, the monster can't be slain until its cursed heart is removed from the layer. Maybe they do a quest for a good aligned witch who lets them know that information. Or if you don't want to do any of that prep work, maybe you just tell them that in the beginning of the encounter. Or if you're more of a harsh DM, you can try to get them to figure that out during this encounter. But hold on to that, because the idea is this monster not only can be harmed, right? If it was just a monster that walked around becoming indestructible, that's still not that scary, right? Because it's simply something you need to avoid, but some players who might have really high ACs or whatever, or ways to avoid getting hit, may not still find this scary. And the idea is we want to bring horror into it. I briefly talked before how horror is still somewhat difficult to do in D&D because you are superpowered fantasy people and you have really cool powers. It's really hard to be scared when you have powers. So what represents that powers in these games, though, is math and mechanics, right? You are a barbarian. You know you take half damage from physical damage. You have a butt ton of health. You get it. The reason you are confident as a barbarian, because that barbarian understands the mechanics that makes them effective in combat. So another thing I would like to emphasize to my players is that, and again, I'll tell you where I got this idea after I write this down, but this monster can we'll put kill in parentheses. Auto kill PCs on a critical strike. Now, we haven't even picked our monster yet, right? And we are doing this against the level 1s. The reason I wanted to make this towards level 1s is because everything's deadly at level 1 anyways. So even if you decided to take this mechanic out, right? The monster can auto kill PCs on a critical strike. It's still pretty deadly at level 1. But if you wanted to turn this into a level 5 adventure, or level 10 adventure, then being able to auto crit kill or down a player is going to be pretty scary. And like I said before, if your players had the opportunity to encounter this monster before this encounter, it may be killing a very strong NPC in a critical strike would help them understand that this is a mechanic. I am very much on the page of like letting my players understand the new mechanics I am using for this fight, right? Because the way combat happens and the way like combat balancing is, at least in D&D, is that the more time you waste not doing damage, the more unbalanced the fight is. So we don't want to touch the combat balancing that much with this encounter, which is the number one pitfall I see when people add layered goals, combat goals into their encounter. They kind of just put stuff in the combat encounter that like does extra damage to them or makes them slow. Those are all unique and fun for maybe a less important encounter, but having your mechanics be a little bit more, word I'm looking for, a little bit more costly. The stakes are a little bit higher with these mechanics. That's what makes a perfect combat encounter to me. So the fact that this monster can not only not be killed, but also can automatically kill somebody in a critical strike. Now, for Dungeons and Dragons, and even in Daggerheart, because the DM also uses a D20, a natural 20 is how you do that. So you have a 1 in 20 chance to maybe possibly kill somebody outright. Or again, if you want to be less intense about it, maybe it just brings them down to 0 HP. So they can still make death saves and such. However strict or not strict you want to do that, I think both is fine for this. We'll even put that here. Auto kill or auto down a player. So I think this works either way. So a 1 in 20 chance, in my eyes, is still not enough, right? Like Vorpal swords exist in the game where players have the access to that ability. So the only thing that becomes scarier, right, is when a critical strike can happen more often. So while your players are running around this manor, for this example, and looking for this cursed heart, the first threat is obviously encountering this creature who cannot yet be harmed and can really mess them up, especially on a critical strike. What if we made that even scarier? There's this mechanic idea I actually got from Pointy Hat. He wrote a one-shot recently for a fundraiser for Pride Month. It's a fantastic one-shot. I highly recommend you go to his channel, you check it out, and support a good cause. But it's beautifully written, and he has this one mechanic while in that one-shot as you're making your way to the final encounter. Different things can make you gain a stack of a thing. I forgot what he calls them, but we're gonna have your players be able to gain a stack of a negative effect. So throughout the different rooms, not only will they have to watch out from being engaged with this monster, they'll also have to watch out for maybe some traps we put in here that will not only maybe do some damage, maybe give them some status effect, but also give them a stack of this new mechanic we make up together. So we're going to put down that different, I know how to spell. And we're going to put traps in quote because I don't, traps could be a lot of things. I don't want just like automatic traps in this house. That doesn't really make sense. But the idea that different traps can give stacks of dread. So we're going to have stacks of dread. What do these stacks of dread do? What it does, ideally, I love doing this in a lot of combat encounters or custom encounters, custom mechanics in general, giving them a stack of something. You've seen it in Dimension 20 sometimes. Even I think Critical Role have done it where like something negative happens, right? They do a check, they roll low, and then like they get a bead. They have no idea what the bead does, right? So the way you can track this this debuff, we'll call it a debuff for all of my MMO friends out there. Stacks of dread debuff. And for every point of it can do something. What we're going to say is that when the monster attacks a player with stacks of dread, its critical strike threshold increases. I guess it decreases, right? Decreases by the number of stacks. So basically the idea is while your players are searching through the house, maybe they come upon an ancient rune that traps them, gives them some doubt, and bestows them a stack of dread. Maybe it's like a curse, a stacking curse. Maybe there is a severed head in one of the rooms that screams at them, and then upon a failed wisdom saving throw, they get another stack of dread. And then, if players are developing these or gaining these stacks of dread while they're looking for the MacGuffin, the heart, the thing that will actually make this thing vulnerable, they actually are becoming more vulnerable to it. So while they're looking for a way to make it vulnerable, they're becoming more vulnerable. In the form of, like, say whenever this thing attacks you, you're currently at 3 stacks of dread. You would subtract 3 from 20, which is 17. And then, so now this creature, the monster, can critically strike you on a 17 to 20 on the die. That makes its ability to auto kill or auto down a player on a critical strike that much more scary. Your players, while you are adding a mechanic to your combat, having something they can track is naturally kind of fun. We like numbers, even if they're bad numbers. We like being able to know how much we're in danger. And then players can strategize around that, right? Maybe if they actually find the thing, get it out of the house, and they're finally fighting the creature, the player who might have the least amount of stacks is the one who engages it first. It opens up a lot of possibilities for your players to maybe work together, maybe to not work together, and just overall makes the combat so much more fun, especially since we're fighting a single enemy. And because we're initially going to balance this for level 1s, it's probably not going to have a bunch of like legendary resistances or legendary actions, but you can feel free to add those at higher levels for sure. We still haven't even picked the monster we're going to do yet. And I think that whenever I'm making a combat encounters to have secondary, more important goals, that's always what I do last. I always figure out like what monsters are they fighting. Half of the time I'm going to reskin them anyways. I might tweak around their abilities like I have in this list so far. And we will we'll pick that later. Like we'll do the combat encounter balancing for 5e in 2025, and we'll pick a monster whose stats kind of represent this lumbering monster. Now let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger, because I doubt you guys can. It doesn't make the text bigger. That's crazy. All right. I'll put all of this in the description whenever we're done. Whenever we're done, I'll have a copy of this in the description if you guys want to know the exact details. So when this monster crits, it can auto kill somebody. And we will have things throughout the house or throughout the encounter that makes critting happen more often. So a very deadly encounter. We can also, again, if you also want this to be even less, like we said, the monster can auto crit, can auto kill. If you want to be super harsh, it can just down PCs if you want to be less harsh, or it can do one of those things after a Constitution saving throw. So funny enough, in the Van Richten's Guide to Everything, part of the reason I'm using the Headless Horseman analogy so much, because they have a Headless Horseman in this book that does a very similar thing. On a crit, they can auto kill someone on a failed con save. So here I also want to put optional. Only happens on failed con save. Now, so just in this line right here, we have like the main mechanic of this fight, right? Is that this creature can auto down someone. How easily you want that to happen as the dungeon master can be, we can juice that up, we can tail it down. And even if we said, hey, it only happens if they fail a con save, that's fine. Maybe the stacks of dread also reduce the or increase the DC they need to have. So let's say by default the DC is like 12, but is increased by 1 for every stack of dread they have. So there's different ways you can kind of fine tune this to be however intense you want it to be, especially based on the information you've given your players before this encounter starts. So let's keep going. So we have this encounter where stacks of dread can be given to make the monster more deadly. That'll increase the player's ability to, or increase their drive to want to find this thing faster. Now we said it's going to move to different rooms, right? Maybe it moves to a different room, or at least in a different direction based on sound. So we can say based on sound. And let's say if let's say they can, if they want, and we can offer it to them every round if they want to move around stealthily. In that case, they can roll a stealth check, and so the monster on its turn will move towards probably the loudest noise. So you can have, like, anyone who wants to roll a stealth check, by the time you get to the monster's turn, you can have it move towards the person who just rolled the lowest. So based on sounds, and then in parentheses we'll put lowest stealth check, if any. So we'll have the monster move in a direction on each of its turns based on if somebody rolled stealth. If everybody rolled stealth, you'll go towards, the monster will move towards the person who rolled the worst. Or if a bunch of people rolled stealth and what your paladin just decided not to, is just clomping around, well, then you have a pretty good idea on where the monster. This is just like how the monster's going to behave. Or if maybe the monster can sense if there's a player inside the room where its heart is at, and then it beelines there. Based on some of that behavior, that might even clue your players in to be like, oh, I'm close to the heart, maybe I'm not. All theoretical, depending on what your players do. Now, let us see. Well, I think that's pretty good. So the different traps we can put in each room, that's really interesting. Let's focus on that a little bit. I'm gonna make like a subcategories here. Don't know how to do that. We're gonna go number. No. What? Okay, never mind. We'll just start listing out trap ideas. Oh, that's how I do that. Okay. Double enter. Let's say one trap is severed. How do you spell severed? Don't judge me on my spelling. Severed head in room will scream when PC enters. And we'll put DC. Again, this is for level 1s ideally, so definitely change these DCs to whatever feels right for kind of the level your players are or are playing at. But we're going to say DC 12 wisdom save, or gain a stack of dread. We're capping dread. So here we've established that there can be maybe some severed heads. If this, again, I guess we're making this the Headless Horseman because that's kind of the analogy we're using, and I just watched Sleepy Hollow. So, but again, you can make this monster wherever you want, and we'll go over that later. But one of the traps will be maybe severed heads of its victims are hanging in different rooms of this creepy old house, and then whenever a player enters that room specifically, it'll start to scream, which will possibly give it a stack of dread and call the monster. Maybe that is a good sign of if it's screaming, then the monster would obviously head towards the direction of that scream, almost like its little creepy alarm systems. Which is, I like that idea because one, it'll cause some panic, but two, if your players are smart, they may learn to, like, maybe if they're like, they need to search this side of the house, they've noticed they've encountered the monster there. Maybe one player can trigger one of these monster heads to distract the monster while other players move in. Ideally, again, like, I like the idea that your players might separate during this, especially since they can't really hurt the monster anyway. So it's not even really worth kind of ganging up for, especially if like multiple people enter this room. Multiple people will get affected by this screaming severed head. Also, the other idea I had for a trap is like a rune trap. A rune trap that will say have a wisdom. No. When triggered, however you want that to be triggered. When triggered, we'll have a DC. We'll just stick with 12 for now. Again, we can adjust these numbers later based on whatever level we want to play this at. DC 12. Con save, or PC is paralyzed. Now, again, you can change this to whatever you want. Again, that's the whole point, is we're playing with ideas, but the specifics of the ideas of the mechanics can be up to you. We can also say this also gains dread and gain a stack of dread. I like that. I think each of the traps should do the dread thing because that's the overall mechanic. But if it does something else, like the severed head is going to give you a stack of dread, but it's also going to call the monster. This rune, this magical rune, is going to give you a stack of dread, but it's also going to paralyze you. The thing about paralyzing you is in the rules of 5e, if you are hit with a melee attack, it is an auto crit. So that makes this super scary, right? Like if the monster's nearby and you're paralyzed for around, we didn't say how long, paralyzed for, let's say 1 minute until, you're paralyzed for 1 minute and can re-roll save at end of turn. So very similar just to like the paralyze that a ghoul would do to somebody. You paralyze, and at the end of each of your turns, you can roll to try to break the paralyzation. So again, that's super deadly, right? Like if you're stuck in a paralyzed lock, that's not that fun either, right? Like if you start this encounter, someone hits this paralyzed rune and then can't break the paralyzed, so they just can't make that save. You can change this if you think that's a problem to, we'll say paralyzed, or poisoned, or / exhausted. Different things I think can still be potentially dangerous to players. Like, let's say if we decided that even on a crit, the players can still make a con save, right? To not get one shot. Maybe this rune trap actually gives them a special poison that gives them disadvantage on con saves. So then it's harder to, it's even more dangerous to fail that save if you were to encounter the monster. I think that's cool. But again, you know, like we're starting to give you the tools to make this as deadly as you want it. Even if you go into this encounter with a couple of these things set in stone, like, maybe it was a paralyzed rune, right? You're going to paralyze for 1 minute and you realize they're having a really hard time. Maybe you switch that to just a poison rune rather than something that'll paralyze them. Or maybe they're having such a hard time, you take away the second mechanic in general and you actually just have them gain the stack of dread. You know, that stack of dread is supposed to be the one mechanic that makes the monster scary. And again, we're trying to do things to make this monster scary. So, cool. I think we can, and that's the thing is like we can add more traps, we can add less traps, and then you can multiply them and then add them to different rooms of your house. Again, you can add more or less of these traps depending on how thick you want this manor to be, how big it is, how many players you have. That is pretty much up to you. And again, you can take them away as you are playing if you feel like your players are getting way too many stacks of dread too early. Cool. I think that is mostly what I want to do. Now, we've said that the monster cannot be harmed until its thing, its heart, as we're saying, is removed from the house. Now, I like that idea because once it is removed from the house, whether it's destroyed or not, it means the creature is vulnerable. And that's where the actual combat will start. But based on how much stacks of dread your players have accrued each, makes that deadlier, that encounter deadlier regardless, because it has the ability to auto kill you. So I feel like maybe once one player, because only one player needs to take it out, right? We've established that it just needs to be out of the house. If it gets out of the house, manor, whatever, then we can say phase 2 starts. So these are all numbered now. It's fine. Once thing, we're still going to call it thing in this because you can make it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be heart. Once thing is out of the house, then phase 2 starts. Now, what happens in phase 2? This could just be anything, right? Like you could say the house starts locking doors. So for the rest of your party to get out of the house, it's making it more difficult. Maybe the floor of the house starts to melt and everything is difficult terrain. Let's do that. I like that. Phase 2. Every surface of the house becomes difficult. Oh man, I cannot type today. Difficult terrain. That could be one thing. We'll also say in phase, I'm just going to label these all phase 2 because then you can kind of grab or take away whatever you want. Phase 2, doors start to lock. Doors start to close and lock. And we'll go ahead and set like DC, we'll put TC 10 lock pick or DC 13 to bash down. Now, however your players want to do that, if they just want to attack it, or if they want to do an athletics check, or they want to use knock as a wizard, that's fine. Pretty much just, you can put down like whether you want to have it be a DC lock, if you want to bash it down, if you want to give it an AC and stats of a wooden door, that's fine too. Kind of whatever you want. But the idea is that we're going to make it harder for them to get out and make it easier for the monster to catch them, right? So let's give the monster something, right? Phase 2. monster. Well, we don't want the monster to slow down. So let's say monster can phase through doors. So now the monster won't. So now all of this like ignores. Did I just spell ignores wrong? Ignores difficult terrain. So during phase 2, as someone has made it out of the house, then the floor becomes difficult terrain. Let's say it's like a melting and stuff, becomes mud. The doors start to close and lock, trapping him in, but the monster is unaffected. I don't think we need to give the monster more movement speed. Again, that could depend on the map you use. If you're doing maybe a cave system instead of like a manor or a house, maybe increasing its speed is a little bit more deadly or detrimental to its kind of deal. Now I think I just realized, so let's say in the middle of looking for the heart, one of the players get encountered by the monster, right? If the monster is still invulnerable because they haven't found the heart and that player is gaining stacks of dread, we can also say that. I like the idea that we won't call it a trap, but attacked by monster. We'll say when someone's attacked by the monster, whether the monster actually hit them or crit them or whatever, the PC gains a stack of dread. So anytime you've encountered the monster actually makes a swing on you, we can give them a stack of dread. Again, you can change that to if they were crit or if they were hit. Maybe if the monster misses, they don't gain a stack of dread. That makes more sense. Let's say PC gains stack of dread on hit. Regardless of crit or not. These are messy notes. I'll clean them up for the description if I put them in the description. But yeah, so here's all of the ways that we want to give stacks of dread. I think severed head sirens, rune traps, and then just being attacked by the monster. If you feel like there are more that need to be in, use your creativity or let me know. Put it in the comments of different ways that you would give stacks of dread. Maybe you can even put in a mechanic where like a lesser restoration or greater restoration actually reduces the amount of stacks, or a removed curse. Because we've called this curses. So maybe let's say a remove curse. Remove curse. Removes 1 stack of dread. That's just something that if your players ask and players have access to remove curse, it does feel very curse-like. So I think having remove curse remove 1 stack if they've decided that that is an efficient use of a spell slot or not, could be a thing. Again, depending on what level your players are. I'm not going to focus too much because again, we're going to balance this for level 1 at the end. So level 1s are probably not going to have access to remove curse, but if you're playing this at higher levels and your players ask, I think that's a good way to have it be effective, but not completely get rid of the mechanic, right? If you're like at 7 stacks and you can just make it all go away in 1 round, I think that kind of breaks what we're building here. So we'll say it can remove a stack of dread, or if you want, you could say it can remove 1d4 stacks of dread, however you want to do that. But okay, once the monster is attacking a player, stacks of dread. Yep. One thing is out of the house. Once thing is out of the house, phase 2 starts. Okay. So phase 2, we've decided every surface, the house just is a harder place to fight in. So maybe the idea is that the final showdown in phase 2 happens when they are outside of the house. And maybe to make it, let's say, I think this is pretty much done. So when you're making encounters, one of the things I've realized I have to be careful for is something called feature creep, which is a term used a lot in like game creation, game design. But it's basically when you think of like, oh, one more thing, oh, one more thing, oh, one more thing, and then overall the encounter or the mechanic becomes a little too dense, right? So I think we're fine with the amount of stuff, right? We have 3 different ways to gain stacks of dread while they're in the house looking for the heart, the thing, the MacGuffin. And then once they get the MacGuffin and can get it out of the house, maybe it's not even when they get out of the house. Once the thing is in possession. Wow. I can't spell. Once thing is, I don't like that wording anyways. Obtained. Can't spell that either. Obtained by PC. Then phase 2 starts, right? So once it's found and someone picks it up, then we'll say phase 2 starts, because then we've also made all the things in phase 2 not just become a barrier, on how to fight the thing, but also becomes a barrier on how to get out. So, bada boom, bada bang. I think we have a really much better encounter that uses a whole map, right? Again, we can use this layer, this map. Let me tell you what the adventure is called. So if you want to look up and use this same map, you can. But also, let me know if you guys are thinking of anything else, right? Like, what other kind of settings would you put this in? Is it a collection of caverns altogether? Is it underground? Is it in an ancient ruin? Ideally, you want to have the ability to move from room to room in one turn at least, right? Maybe multiple rooms, but I can't find where this thing is. But the idea is that maybe you use an action to search the room, right? I think that's important. We should put that down here. As you can tell, I am all over the place. Remove from its layer. We will also say, let's say DC, we're going to say DC 15 investigation or, wow. Or perception. This live stream is calling me out for how much I can't spell, which is fine. I don't care. We'll say a DC 15 or perception check to be sure the thing. I think we're still calling that a thing in this doc. Thing is not in said room. Now you could tell your players that that's the DC or not, or you can just have them like, if they got a 14, maybe it is, maybe it isn't in the room, you know? But that I think can be, that'll be kind of the starting place on determining whether something is or is not in the room. The item is or not in the room. Then, yeah, I like that. And again, you can play around with that. I think it's really fun that, like, if you have a class or subclass that allows you to do such checks on a bonus action, can be super beneficial. Let's see. Okay, so we know how we find it. We have to go to each room and search for it. Now, where you put that thing, you can kind of put it wherever. Can it move on its own? Who knows, right? Can the monster move it on its turn? I think all of that, I don't want to put that in here because I think all of that are things you should decide in the moment, right? If they're beelining straight towards it, maybe you just let them beeline straight towards it. Or if you want them to kind of investigate, maybe encounter some of these other traps first, maybe it moves if the rogue is like somehow beelining straight towards it. But regardless, I think that's the kind of decisions you make in the moment. Deciding if like don't have them in here forever. Like if they're constantly gaining stacks of dread, maybe based on their stacks of dread, you can determine, if it's easier or harder to find. But that's kind of where you kind of use your own kind of intuition as a DM and find out if they, how bad it needs to be. So we have a way, starting from the top. Monster can't be harmed until thing is obtained. Whether they've tried that before or during this encounter is up to you. PCs must search for thing, we're calling it the cursed heart, in the different rooms of the battle map. And then we've also determined that they need to make a 15 investigation or perception check, ideally as their action, right? And their movement is to get from room to room, to find out if the thing is in that room or not, if it's hidden somewhere, however you want to hide that, if it's in the wall, if it's on a pedestal, whatever. Every round, the monster will move to different rooms based on sounds. We've talked about how if players want to do so stealthily, maybe they do it at half movement and then can roll stealth checks. On a fail, maybe on a crit fail, it sends the monster straight towards them. That's kind of some more monster behavior advice, but your monster you can number all of the rooms and roll. And maybe during that turn, the monster just heads in that direction. Completely up to you. Players should have the info that they cannot be harmed before entering the house. We said that, but I think that's up to you, right? If your players are kind of stacked, they make good checks, they could maybe try to fight the monster and then realize they can't and need to search for something else in the house. I like the idea better that they know they need that. At least give them the information that something in the house is required for you to be able to defeat this monster. I think if some cryptic doomsayer gives them that information or something, I think that's enough for them to go on to be able to get through this mechanic and figure it out without being completely lost. Monsters can't be slain till the cursed heart, I did name it cursed heart here, is removed from its lair. The monster can auto kill, auto down on a critical strike. Optionally, you can have that happen only if it critical strikes and the player fails a con save. Again, that DC can be whatever you want. If it's a low level 1, we'll say we'll put this DC 10 con save. But again, you can make that whatever you want. And different traps. Okay, that's when we'll not. This is where we talk more about its ability to one-shot you, right? If you have maybe put in some of like the con save as a way for it to stop, or if you say it only downs them instead of kills them, maybe you double up on the amount of ways they can gain the stack of dread, which will increase the amount. Will technically decrease the number they need to roll to be able to crit on a player. And again, you can track this for each player, right? Each player will have their own stacks. If you're on roll 20, you can make like a custom counter and just have each player's name on it, and you can count that up or down. If you're playing in person, you can literally just have a separate die in front of each of them that they count up as they gain stacks of dread. We talked about if someone talks about remove curse or maybe some other lesser restoration or something like that. We've talked about how you can maybe remove those stacks. Once the players once the thing is obtained, once a player finds the heart or MacGuffin, that's when you can kick on phase 2. Phase 2 kind of comes from the idea of the house awakening. They talk a lot about it in Van Richten's guide of like if you're doing a haunted house, at some point the house kind of awakens and the house actively tries to stop you. And we've simulated that by saying that different surfaces of the house will become difficult terrain. I put every surface in case you have, I don't know, players that like can walk on walls or something. And that's only if you don't want to reward that, right? If you have someone who casts spider climb and you think that's a really cool idea, that could be the one player that's not affected by the difficult terrain, feel free to have it just be the floors. And then the different doors start to close and lock. So maybe now each player has to, if they're in the room by themselves, they have to get through the door towards the exit. And if they're not together, they have to do that. You have to use the action every turn to do that, kind of giving the monster a chance to track them down. Maybe if we want to get crazy too, one more thing is like in phase 2, every time you end your, every time a PC ends their, that's not the right there, their turn in the house, they gain another stack of dread. I think this will be cool to implement if you get to phase 2 and you realize nobody has stacks of dread yet, or has gotten around it or cured it, or however you let them manipulate that. If that's the case, then you can implement this. We'll put optional in the beginning, because I think this should be very optional. So then, because ideally they're either going to fight now that the if they get the heart out of the house, then the monster becomes vulnerable, and that's when they actually start the fight. And if they are deciding to still fight him in the house while it's in this phase 2, then it becomes extremely more deadly. And I think a good way for them to find out that that happens is when the one player who actually has the MacGuffin and gets out of the house, once the players start to realize that that player is not getting stacks, right? Then that's a good way to find out that, like, oh, we should get out of the house, or we should take this fight out of the house. Ideally, the monster's going to find them and try to get their heart back no matter what. I think that's another good thing to put in phase 2. Yes. Monster always knows position of PC with heart. Or we'll put thing again. I'll unify and clean up all these terms when I make the final thing. But so every time the PC, every time a PC ends their turn in the house, they can just drag. That's not what I just wrote. The monster always knows a PC with the thing. So I think that's what kicks off phase 2, right? Even if the monster is maybe going toe to toe with the paladin in the back of the house, the minute like the rogue grabs that item and starts to head out of the house, the monster just kind of like turns heel and immediately knows that its protection is in danger. So then the final fight, right? The final fight is in phase 2. So then we just find a monster. And this is the beautiful part, because we've done so much work on like the secondary mechanic that is much more important. The monster's stats almost doesn't matter. So if we're doing level 1s, right? We're going to say, we're going to grab the monster manual and the Dungeon Master's Guide real quick. And I think for level 1s, you know what? We don't even need to look up the chart, right? Like a medium encounter, right? Like an average encounter for for 4 level 1s would be a CR1, right? So let's go over to our little compendium. And I think we can search level CR1 creatures. Challenge rating 1. Apply. And I don't think you can see this right now. So let's we'll save changes on our notes, so we have that. We will get rid of this, and then we'll slide this over. Cool. So we're just looking at monsters, right? Animated armor could be cool because it has multi-attack. It has multi-attack, so the animated armor actually might be a little bit more dangerous, right? Because if we're decreasing the number it needs to roll on the die for critical strikes, being able to attack twice at level 1 is pretty intense. Got decent strength, decent constitution, huge armor class, slow speed. I kind of like the slow speed of it. 33 hit points for a level 1 is still like they'll have to tangle with that monster quite a bit even after it becomes vulnerable. I don't hate the idea of animated armor, and animated armor technically doesn't have a head, so it can fit the Headless Horseman theme pretty well, I think. Let's look around. Vanguard Skeleton from Monster Manual Expanded. 15. It's got some spell crafting. Can bling. I don't like that. I don't think it really fits the monster really. Now we can even look at this is the the magic, I'd say, of reskinning monsters. Because then once you realize how easy it is to like just kind of reimagine something, if you look at a monster stat block and you just like take away the word brown bear and you take away anything that identifies it as a very certain creature, then I think it makes it more fun, in my opinion. Brown bear, I think, is also really good, right? It's a brute. It has multi-attack. It's got a decent amount of health. It has a higher speed. So if you want your monster, Headless Horseman, to kind of travel through the map faster, having a climb speed of 30 is terrifying if you think about it in this concept of a haunted house. I like that. I like the brown bear and just thinking of it differently. You can increase the armor value and hit points if that really bothers you, but I think I kind of like the animated armor. I'm leaning towards the animated armor. I want to look at Bugbear Warrior. I do want to check that out real quick just to see. Bugbears. They have a grab. Ooh, that's fun. The grapple condition can happen. It only gets, so if you want, it's got, I forgot they have reach. If this is also a really good option, 33 health, which is same as the animated armor, a little bit less armor class. Normal speed. That stuff doesn't matter too much. Its actions, it has a grab, which I think could be really cool. And it's an attack. So technically this can also crit, which means it could, if it doesn't get the crit on you but still hits you, it can grapple you. It doesn't do 2 attacks in a round. So if you want, if you're too scared that having a creature with multi-attack is going to maybe have this one-shot capability it has happen too often, then maybe picking a creature like the Bugbear Warrior, who might have reach, who has some grappling, but only can attack once a turn, I think is really cool. I think we're gonna go with Bugbear. I think I like the idea of, like, in the movie when like everyone's in a room and they're planning, and then the killer comes in and they get one good strike on somebody, and then everyone scatters or runs or whatever. I kind of like that idea. The Bugbear doesn't need extra movement to move a creature that it is grappling. I like that idea too, where it can just take even the biggest targets, just like a big lumbering, supernaturally strong enemy. And again, remember, we're reskinning this. It's not going to be a Bugbear in here. It'll be our Headless Horseman or whatever kind of monster we've decided. I like the idea of like a headless lumberjack with an axe. That's, I think, what I had in mind when making this. So I think we're going to go with the Bugbear Warrior. I really like the Bugbear Warrior. But again, the animated armor is really good if you really want to punish your players by having it have multiple attacks, aka multiple chances to get that that punishing critical strike. or the bear. Bugbear skeleton? That's confusing. I like the Bugbear Warrior. I think if I run this, I'm probably using the Bugbear Warrior. So I'm actually just going to take its token and I'm going to drag it out here just so I have the stat block in this game. There he is. Now, what we can do, especially if we're in roll 20, we can essentially assign this token, this lumbering creature I had go around, and we can assign him the stat block of the Bugbear. And I think that's it, guys. I think we have our notes. This is how we've taken the first little objective here out of all of these combat prompts. And we've used the first one, how to obtain or steal an important item or items as a secondary objective to your combat. So I think we've almost added like a weird, very risky mini game before the combat starts, right? So then now it's the combat section after phase 2 should be pretty short, right? 33 health, even for a bunch of level 1s. You can probably get through that pretty fast if, you know, paladins have smite and stuff. But if that thing gets one turn and your players have multiple stacks of dread, even in that last moment of that last combat where you can actually damage the creature, it is going to still be risky, right? Because now this creature has this crazy ability to one-shot people, and depending on how long it took for your players to get to that point, then it could be super scary. And I like that idea. I guess I've made this kind of into a boss fight. I don't see how this is not a boss fight, but we can also set up the different ways on how you get the information to do all of this, right? You might have a couple of encounters that lead you to the information about this. You have maybe an encounter where you meet this headless horseman creature outside of this house to experience its invulnerability, or maybe experience its ability to instantly one-shot somebody. You can have a lot of fun with this, and this is usually how I create adventures or even whole campaigns. I'll literally I'll design the combat encounter that I want to have using everything I did here. I come up with a cool twist to the combat, I make mechanics for it, and then I work backwards on like kind of maybe foreshadowing those mechanics with completely other encounters, or maybe even completely other adventures, right? The possibility is endless. I don't think anyone stuck around here for too long, and that is okay. I'm really excited for this combat, and I think I'm going to run it. Maybe if people are interested, I will run it with people and record it to see if some of the predictions I've made or we've made in this happens during actual gameplay. But I think that's going to end things for now. The hour and 20 something stream, my first stream doing this. Yeah. So if you have any questions or any suggestions on maybe other ways we could grant these stacks of dread, maybe another mechanic within the house to naturally reduce the stacks of dread. You can literally add we made our main goals, and we have added little cliff notes on how those goals or those mechanics can happen more often. Anyways, I've rambled enough today. Thank you so much for watching. If you watch this, hopefully I will get around to editing this into a more cohesive video. And I hope to see more of you next time. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you then.